Hello, what is happening out there, guys? How are you all doing? My name is Rob, and welcome back to Rule of Two Review. So for anyone who's new to the channel, I have recently started a Star Wars movie and Star Wars news series, and this is the new video in that series because, oh boy, do we have some stuff to talk about. Now, to be fair, I'm definitely a couple of days behind on this news. At this point, everyone and their mom has talked about what's been going on. Everyone's podcasted about it. Everyone's made YouTube videos and tweets and all these different things and written their articles. So I only have so much in the realm of new information to add to the conversation, but I do have a lot to say on what's going on, and I think it's pretty important, and I think you're going to like it. So obviously, the big to-do is the fact that Colin Trevorrow, who was slated to direct Star Wars Episode 9 coming out in May 2019, has now left the film. He is no longer the director of the movie, and it's a pretty big deal. Because, you know, for all the reasons we already know, I'll try not to retread all the stuff you've seen 100 other YouTubers talk about. But this comes off the heels of what happened with Lord and Miller on Han Solo. And we all know Josh Trank had issues and Gareth Edwards had issues. And there were even some talks very early on about J.J. Abrams with Episode 7, The Force Awakens. I don't know that I 100% believe that stuff, but all the other stuff, it's basically concrete, documented. We know there's been some issues in the world of Star Wars films and Star Wars directors in this new post-George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy Disney era. So, obviously what I want to do is talk about what I think this means. Beyond the obvious stuff of, well, they have to find a new director. Yeah, duh, I know. That's obviously true. And there's even a lot of reports that state they might even already have their new director and they're just not ready to reveal this person. Maybe they're trying to time it specifically with like the new trailer for The Last Jedi. The Collider Jedi Council folks discussed that. And I think that's actually a pretty good point. I think that that's probably true. But this is huge. This is absolutely huge, guys. And it's unfortunate that it's huge. Now, my take on this is twofold, because I think that there's some good to this, and there's obviously some not so good to this. So what's the good news here? Well, for me, and for a lot of people, it seems, the good news is, overall, I think it's probably best that Colin Trevorrow isn't the person who's directing Episode 9. Now, full disclosure, I never hated the idea. I always thought that he was like a fine, simple choice that I felt was maybe going to echo the way the original trilogy played out, where, you know, Return of the Jedi being the final film there was very quietly directed by Richard Marquand. And I know like a lot of Star Wars fans know that, but it's not like it's discussed to the same level of, well, George Lucas directed Episode 4, and then Irvin Kershner directed Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. Obviously, him and George Lucas together. Everyone kind of knows that a little bit more obviously than Richard Marquand. He was this safe, quiet guy who really didn't steer that ship. That is very well known to be pretty much George Lucas's movie. He basically directed Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And for what it's worth, I freaking love Return of the Jedi. Haters gonna hate that movie is incredible. Happens to have my favorite scene in all of the Star Wars movies. And for some reason to me, coming off of J.J. Abrams for Episode 7, Rian Johnson for the upcoming Episode 8, I felt like Colin Trevorrow coming off of Jurassic World, and obviously he was this big hot guy. They wanted to just get in on the film, and you know, Kathleen Kennedy liked him so much. They had a good rapport. I was like, you know what? Like, I don't like necessarily know the guy well enough to love him or hate him, but it's fine. Because I've been just trusting in Kathleen Kennedy, in Lucasfilm, and in the story group, and in the story that I was hoping and assuming that they already had prepared for this entire sequel trilogy arc. Also, it should be noted that, again, I like Jurassic World a lot. People want to crap on that movie now because it was so popular, it's the hot thing to do. I think it was really good. Like, I have pretty much no issues with it other than it's just still not as good as the original Jurassic Park. I haven't seen Safety Not Guaranteed, and I know everyone talks about the Book of Henry was trash, so this is obviously part of what led to the decision. Obviously, we don't know. I don't know all the things that led to this happening, but I have a feeling it wasn't just directing one bad movie that led this to happen. So for what it's worth, I'm not trying to say I like or dislike Colin Trevorrow based on his past works or whatever. I just really felt like he hasn't yet shown me anything that showed us, or myself as a fan, that he has the filmmaking fundamentals and the storytelling fundamentals to tell something as vast, as important, as epic, and as real as what an episodic Star Wars film needs to be. So why do I see this as not so good? That's kind of going to lead us into the meat of the conversation and what I wanted to talk to you guys about and sharing my thoughts about what's going on here. The reason I see this as a bad thing is because I feel like it shows some of our possible worst fears, or our big fears, I should say, of what might be happening behind the scenes in the post-George Lucas Lucasfilm era might actually be true. One of the things that has started to come out kind of from the rumor mill over the last 4 or 5 months or so, pretty much since Star Wars Celebration, which we got to attend, by the way, so good, is the idea that, honestly, they might not, Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy, who I love Kathleen Kennedy as well, they might not have actually scripted out and drafted the actual story beats and the entire arc of this new trilogy. And there's some talk and scuttlebutt from apparently some reputable sources. I don't know these sources. I'm just a guy on the internet. But apparently there's been talks from some people that very possibly they were like, hey, JJ, you and the story group and you guys work together and just, here you go, write the script, make episode 7, that's episode 7, and then the next person will do episode 8, and then the next person will do episode 9. And it was just like this kind of, not so much winging it, but sort of just making it as you go. And that really doesn't sit right with me for so many reasons. It is counterintuitive to everything Star Wars and the storytelling of Star Wars had stood for the 40 years, almost 40 years, until we had our first new Star Wars movie with episode 7 in 2015. That's not the roots that George Lucas built the Star Wars ground on. And so it feels very awkward, very uncomfortable to hear that. When I look at episode 7, which I know that there are a lot of haters, but I really like episode 7. The Force Awakens is a very good movie. It's too safe. I have some qualms, but that's not how I look at Star Wars movies. It's just a great episode 7. I like it. But when I look at it, and I consider that stuff, and then I look at what's happening behind the scenes with Colin Trevorrow right now, it's like, man, maybe that's true. And maybe Lucasfilm, in a very unfortunate and I think misguided move, decided to just let brand new filmmakers come into this ship and try to steer it one at a time and just kind of pass the baton. And I think that there's an admirable approach there. I think conceptually, the idea is great because it sort of is meant to, I think, just to create a good pool of creativity and just allow different filmmakers and creative storytellers to come in. And Colin Trevorrow has gone on record saying this actually before leaving episode 9, kind of treating it like a campfire with a bunch of different storytellers telling their own versions of the story around a campfire. And I think that that sounds great. I think that there's room for that in a lot of different areas of the filmmaking and storytelling world. But Star Wars, at least the episodic Star Wars films, and at least these episodes, which are concluding the original 9-arc George Lucas arc, even though these final 3 aren't really his story, still, they're finishing the Anakin, Luke, Vader, Skywalker saga. And so throwing that mentality into this final trilogy, however it's being told, doesn't feel right. And like I was saying, with episode 7, you can kind of see the seams of that problem. And so for myself, hearing the things we're hearing about Colin Trevorrow leaving and the fact that he was kind of more or less fired and that maybe everyone wasn't getting along behind the scenes, they couldn't find a script that actually made sense, that concluded the trilogy the right way. They had to bring in Jack Thorne to kind of help Trevorrow with the script because he was also writing the movie and also going to direct it. And they were going to start shooting the film in January, which is only a couple of months from now. And then hearing him leave and all of these different rumors makes me think, you know, there probably is some truth to that. Now, the X factor here, which is an important X factor, is unfortunately, we all know we lost Carrie Fisher. And there is no doubt, based on everything we heard, that Carrie Fisher, General Leia, was going to play a huge part in episode 9. And that I cannot imagine the hell that has put on the creative process for episode 9 to have filmed and completed whatever she was supposed to be a part of in episode 8 that was going to set up her to have a monumental role in episode 9. There is no doubt that that's probably a huge factor that has led to some of the strife in trying to make episode 9 work behind the scenes. And I feel terrible for the story group and for Colin Trevorrow and Kathleen Kennedy and all these people to have to work with that. That is an insane level of stress and pressure to deliver and probably change whatever they had thought they were going to start to do, and to change all of that and make that work seamlessly with episode 8, and just that's so unfortunate. And so credit has to be given to that unfortunate piece of news that I think has probably changed the production. And to be fair, Colin Trevorrow is only one man. Whatever director was in his shoes at that time is only one person, and they probably did the best they could have done before things came to a head behind the scenes. But that being said, I still feel like it's also exposing the fact that this new era, and whatever maybe Kathleen Kennedy was trying to do, or maybe it was Disney execs, I sure hope not, but maybe it was them, whoever, were trying to just kind of create Star Wars movies, the episodic Star Wars movies, in a way that they're probably not meant to be created. And I think that they've learned their lesson, and I think that it's a shame, if there's truth to this, which maybe this is wrong, but if there's truth to this, that they were just making up the stories. You know, JJ left episode 7, and then here you go. Now Luke's on a cliff. Make a whole new story. You figure out what happens next. That's not the best way to tell a Star Wars trilogy, an episodic trilogy. You got to have the beats of episode 7, episode 8, and episode 9 planned out. This character goes through this arc here, then they go through this arc here, then they finish their arc here. That's how you do it. That's how Lucas told his first 2 trilogies. That's why they worked so well. That's why the characters are so memorable and so great, because everything was part of a cohesive vision. Now, to be fair, we, unfortunately for myself and many fans, we don't have George Lucas involved. We don't have his singular vision. We don't have any one person's singular vision. So in some ways, maybe we couldn't help but get here because Lucas retired, sold the company, and stepped away from Star Wars and filmmaking. We had to get to this weird sort of awkward growing pains phase, and I think that's what we're in. It just really sucks to see it happening so soon after Lucas's decision to retire, and with the initial movies right out of the gate, and because, again, for all of its problems, I still think episode 7 is really great. Amazing characters and an interesting story that I'm excited to see continue. So the big question is, what happens next? Well, we have to get a new director. I probably should make a different video about who should become this new director, but there might not be that much time, honestly. Like, this may be announced in a couple of days, and I only make Star Wars videos every once in a while, so it's a little bit tough for me to say. But the big question is, who are they going to get to replace Colin Trevorrow? How is this film and this trilogy going to finish out not only its own trilogy, but if you think about it, God, this film has the monumental task of completing the entire 9-arc Skywalker George Lucas saga. That's insane. There is so much pressure there. And, you know, I'll just run through some of the quick things. Again, everyone has talked about this. I'm not telling you guys anything new. To me, the person that makes the most sense is Rian Johnson. And it's for reasons that not enough people have talked about. I mean, some things are obvious and people have talked about them. He's already written episode 8, so why not just keep him on for episode 9? It makes the most sense. And honestly, I agree with that. We haven't seen The Last Jedi. We don't know it's going to be great. I obviously believe it's going to be absolutely fantastic, but you don't truly know until you see it. That being said, all positive stuff from behind the scenes. No issues or drama with Rian Johnson. He is like, right now, the Lucasfilm golden child. Forget JJ. It's Rian Johnson. He is the golden child of Lucasfilm right now. And to me, what I like is also, when you think about, well, you know, Rian Johnson told his episode 8, that was his own story, picking up from episode 7, and then someone else is just going to pick up from Rian Johnson's next steps and make episode 9. Well, think about the creative process. Think about being in Rian Johnson's shoes, telling your episode 8 story on paper and then making it a movie. No matter what you think someone else might do with it, you have created a story with episode 8 that you have no doubt thought about where those steps lead to in another film. For every step of the way, even though Rian Johnson knew, I'm not making episode 9, I'm just making episode 8. You know, he still knew when he wrote down, Luke does this, Rey says this, Finn goes to this place. He's thinking. He's like, if I was going to make episode 9, this is what would then happen, because Finn went here or Rose did this. This is what would happen in my episode 9, but I'm not making it. I hope the next person just does good things. But now he might be in a position to be able to actually make an episode 9. And if he does, the ideas that were in his head when he wrote down the ideas and script and made the movie episode 8, The Last Jedi, now he can make them come true, which means that a complete vision will have kind of happened on screen, and unfortunately, I have to say, by accident. I mean, really think about that for a minute. It's pretty incredible to think that we might actually be in a position where one person's true vision, multi-film vision, might actually happen, because right now, all reports is that with Lucasfilm, there isn't multi-film visions. They're just making one movie, then another movie, then another movie. And we don't like that. I don't like that. So it would be really interesting to see that happen. People talk about Rian Johnson's going to need a break. He probably won't want to do it. I think all that's true, but I think that if he was going to do it, we're all forgetting one thing. I think Rian Johnson would be someone who might be willing to put himself through the grueling nature of going from movie to movie just because he cares. Because Star Wars is sacred. Star Wars is special. And I think he might be something where he might be tasked with, you know, Kathleen Kennedy goes to him and says, hey, dude, We want you to do episode 9. We're in a bind. You've done a great job. You can complete the story. You're the guy we want to do it. And he might be sitting there saying, man, I'm tired. I'm beat up. I want a vacation. I wasn't prepared to jump right into another movie. But you know what? It's important. The fans are worth it. The story is worth it. Star Wars is important. George Lucas's vision of this amazing universe he created and changed film with matters. And I have an opportunity to honor that and to do something that is true and right for the story, for the franchise, for the fans. And he would be under no obligation to do it, but I could see him being somebody that would decide to do it, if not for that reason alone. And so that's just kind of something I wanted to throw out there and get everyone's minds thinking about. Beyond that, there's 1,000 other options. I think Ron Howard is a possibility. JJ, yeah, he's a possibility, but I really don't see that being a high likelihood like some people want to say. And again, I love JJ as a director. I thought he did a serviceable enough job with episode 7. I do not want him back on an episodic Star Wars film, and I definitely don't want him back on episode 9 when he then had nothing to do with episode 8. I just don't like that idea, so I love you, JJ, but no, please don't do it. You know, I'm going to say my fanboy pick here, you guys. And it's been discussed. If George Lucas came back and made episode 9, I would freak out. I mean, it's not going to happen. Here's the reason I don't want it to happen. Because I don't think he would want to do it, and because he wouldn't be telling his story anymore. He'd be finishing 2 films that were not his story. We know some things were taken from his original drafts for the trilogy, like Rey, the character, was basically created by George Lucas, by the way, and she's the best character in the movie. So, you know, there are some things that are from George Lucas, but really 7 and 8 are not his story. So I don't think that he would be comfortable finishing a trilogy that, even though it's part of his world, this trilogy isn't his story. So that just might not be something that he's into, and I just don't see George doing that. But, I mean, it's not impossible, and oh my God, the fanfare. If that you guys, I'll die. I'll be so happy. So there's a whole longer conversation I might make a video on about that. But anyway, George Lucas is who I want. It's not going to happen, and that's okay. Rian Johnson makes the most sense. You talk about Jon Favreau, you talk about Matthew Vaughn, you talk about, I mean, people are saying crazy things like Edgar Wright and Christopher Nolan, and like, I love these guys, but no, it's not going to be them. I'm not going to go off too much farther at this point. I mean, really the only guys that are interesting for me to talk about when it comes to episode 9 are Rian Johnson and George Lucas. I gave you the Rian Johnson spiel. I gave you the 30-second George Lucas spiel because I don't want to take another 19 minutes in this video to just gush about George Lucas directing another Star Wars movie. And I'll just leave this here. So this is kind of my thoughts, my rambling and mumbling about what's happening with episode 9. I'm glad Colin Trevorrow isn't the guy directing the film, but I'm sad he's not directing the film because it shows internal strife and it shows a lack of vision and focus for this trilogy that I think Star Wars episodic trilogies really, truly demand and need. And it's a shame to kind of see this happening that in a way that shows us that they're probably not going about it that way. So, you know, at the end of the day, I think episode 8 is going to be great. And I fully have faith still in Lucasfilm and in Kathleen Kennedy to make this final film come out right. Whatever happens with Han Solo, don't know, don't care. The episodes are what I truly care about. And I think, even with all this stuff with Trevorrow, I think episode 9, however it turns out, whoever makes this movie, I think it's going to still be great like it deserves to be. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts here because, again, talking Star Wars is new for me on Rule of 2 Review, even though Star Wars is my favorite thing in the world. And this is such big news. It's such a big deal. We're talking about the final episode in the new trilogy, the final episode in the 9-movie saga. It's a big deal. I like Trevorrow. Me being happy he's not making the movie, again, has nothing to do with me disliking him or thinking he's not talented. I just want someone more Star Wars appropriate, and at least we're gifted that opportunity. So it'll be interesting to see who does it. Probably Rian Johnson. But what do you guys think? Who do you want to direct it? What do you think about Trevorrow leaving? All this stuff. Talk about Star Wars below. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of 2 Review, and I will catch you next time on the next video.